Hunter Biden and the Biden crime family eke out another one. A very, very nice sweetheart deal, some might say a corrupted deal, is apparently about to be entered between the very impartial, very fair, same DOJ that tells us that nobody's above the law. Well, they've worked one out with Hunter Biden. And so we've got the court docket now, and we've got the letter that came out from David Weiss and his underlings, who actually signed the letter, sent over to the court notifying them that a plea deal has been arranged. So we're going to look at the docket. It's very sparse right now. You know, there's nothing in there about a search warrant or a raid of a residence or anything like that at all. Just this nice little ironed out deal, all done behind closed doors. A very simple letter, and we can see the formalities they'll go through to execute the deal. Same deal that a lot of other people don't get. People like Jenna Ellis on Twitter have noted this. Same with Mike Cernovich. They've pointed out the following, that these terms are so outside the norm that it causes people to question even further how corrupt and partisan is the DOJ. So CNN came out with the story, but here's what they tell us. Hunter Biden about to plead guilty for very minor crimes relative to his actions.
5-year-long investigation now coming to a head. Wow. We have learned from new court filings at the U.S. District Court here in Wilmington, Delaware, that Hunter Biden has agreed to plead guilty to multiple criminal charges. I'm going to walk you through this. One of these charges.
This is the culmination of a 5-year investigation. So does that mean like we're done? There's nothing else to unpack here? All the FD 1023 stuff, all the allegations about the $5 million that came from the Ukrainian executive who was on the board of Burisma or ran Burisma, paying off Hunter, $5 million to him, $5 million to Joe. None of that? Are we done? Has all of that been buttoned up here? Is that the question?
These are 2 counts of failing to file tax returns in a timely fashion. Those are misdemeanors. He's also going to plead guilty to a charge of a firearm offense. This is the possession of a firearm while you are addicted to a controlled substance. Now, the firearm offense is going to be diverted. And what that means is that if he meets certain conditions, that charge will go away. This will be over a set period of time. Otherwise, it's the tax misdemeanor charges that he has been charged with.
So 2 misdemeanor charges, failure to file taxes untimely, right? It's just like, you were late on your taxes and you maybe did something bad about that. We'll go through the formal information and we'll take a look at that in more detail. But the other charge, the gun charge, which is when Hunter Biden was in possession of a gun, he made all these admissions in his book. We know he signed a form saying, no, I'm not on drugs. In his book, he's like, yeah, I'm definitely on drugs. And so they say, okay, it's a little bit of a felony, right? But did you hear what she said about diversion? It's going to be diverted. So we come out, we hear, oh, it's a felony. Wow, this Justice Department, they're really serious. When they say nobody's above the law, man, they mean it. Look, they're prosecuting the president's son with a felony. And that felony, though, is not going to stick around. That's what diversion means. The way that I would often explain this is that in order to have a criminal conviction, which is what everybody wants to avoid, that's the big no-no. We have to be very clear with our language here. In order to get a conviction, in this case, a felony conviction, typically what happens is somebody has to plead guilty. That's one component, which is what Joe Biden's son, Hunter, is willing to do here. And then they have to be sentenced. There are 2 pieces to this puzzle. 1 + 1 = 2. You have guilty plea plus a guilty sentence equals a conviction. But something can happen here in a case of a diversion agreement. In other words, what happens is Hunter goes, actually pleads guilty. So we have part 1, but there is no sentence on that charge. If Hunter agrees with all of these various terms, what the court will do is set this out, and then we'll come back and revisit it at a later date. And they'll say, well, you complied with the terms of the plea, meaning you didn't commit any other crimes. You were, off drugs and alcohol for whatever. You complied with the terms of probation. You checked in with your probation officer, blah, 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 whatever the terms of the diversion are. It might be nothing. It might literally just be remain a law-abiding citizen. Don't get in trouble with the law again. He says, okay, great. I can do that. I got Secret Service now covering for me. You kidding me? In addition to the FBI. Those were a long time ago. I didn't have as much cover back then. Daddy was only VP. Now he's the president. So then when they come back, that second half of that, the sentence is a dismissal of the case. It's an agreement to just drop the charge because they complied with the terms of the plea. And so there is no actual sentence, which means you actually have no conviction. So now it's 1 + 0, essentially, because the sentence is a dismissal, equals no conviction. And so they're just teeing this up. So it's basically nothing, just so we're clear, right? The felony, which maybe is a felony thing, which may prohibit him from possessing a firearm again, which may prohibit him from voting again. Based on the terms of this diversion deal, Hunter's going to be voting, baby. He'll be back in the voting booth, pulling it 100 times for daddy. Here's what CNN says.
This is a plea deal that he has reached with the U.S. Attorney's Office here. That U.S. Attorney, David Weiss, was a Trump appointee and someone that Joe Biden, the president, did not replace. And one of the reasons why he didn't replace him was because of this investigation. They wanted to avoid any appearance of political interference.
Right, that's why they didn't replace him, because he was such a good, loyal DOJ person that he was going to be fair and impartial. If they would have removed him, it would have looked bad. And it was a Trump appointee, so they left him there because they care about justice more than anything. Does that sound like a likely story to anybody? No, not to me. What I think more likely happened is Trump is in office. He is under a barrage of judicial appointments. Appoint this guy, appoint this guy. You've got Republicans coming at him, put this person over here, this person over here. Somebody at the DOJ, maybe Bill Barr, knows that they've got to put a team player in the Delaware jurisdiction. That's got to be somebody they can control who is on board with this, because they know that this is going to be one of the most important offices and jurisdictions there. So Trump is just appointing people. And so they appoint this guy. He is exactly who they wanted there. And the whole thing is still under control of the same administrative state, the same establishment as before. That's why they didn't get rid of the guy. And he delivered, man. He came out here and there are basically no charges here at all. And it sounds like this is the culmination of a 5-year investigation. You're kidding me. You needed 5 years to charge Hunter with he was late on his tax filings? You needed 5 years for that? Wow, incredible. Great work. And for a gun charge that he wrote about in his book, these are the DOJ prosecutors over there? It's in his book, man! What kind of investigation do you need to do? All right, so after their extensive investigation, here's what they decide is an appropriate resolution for the very innocent Hunty. Here's what they tell us. Letter comes from the U.S. Department of Justice, from the District of Delaware, which is David Weiss's office. Now, you'll notice that this letter is not actually submitted by David Weiss, who is the United States attorney assigned to this. We've got 2 other special assistant U.S. attorneys on this case. One named Leo Wise, which is very closely phonetically related to Weiss, but it's not the same. It's Wise versus Weiss. And another one, Derek Hines, Special Assistant U.S. Attorneys, along with Benjamin Wallace. So we've got 4 different prosecutors on this case. David Weiss, who they keep referring to as the Trump-appointed attorney, who didn't even sign this letter, gives them cover of legitimacy because he's a Trump-appointed person. So they send this over now to the court. They say the following. On June 20th, the letter goes to Mr. Keith Kincaid from U.S. District Court Clerk's Office, the clerk of the court, out in Wilmington, Delaware, notifying the court, hey, we've got something to tell you about Robert Hunter Biden, saying, hey, dear clerk, enclosed, I've got some paperwork for you here. Please find 2 informations to be docketed. We're going to go through those next. In criminal matters involving the above referenced defendant, Hunter. The first information charges the defendant with tax offenses, namely 2 counts of willful failure to pay income tax in violation of the law. Out of everything, failure to pay your taxes. Defendant agreed to plead guilty to both counts of the tax information. The second charges Hunter with a firearms offense. 1 count of possession of a firearm by a person who is an unlawful user of or addicted to a controlled substance. The defendant has agreed to enter pre-trial diversion agreement with respect to the firearm information, which means this could actually be even a better deal than the deal I described. So depending on the mechanics of this, diversion can work in one of really 2 ways I've seen it function. One is it's a pre-plea diversion, which means you don't even actually have to plead guilty first. So back to that equation that I was just describing, 1 + 1 equals guilty, or a conviction, a guilty plea plus a guilty sentence equals a conviction. This is not either of those at all. You're not even required to plead guilty to this because it's pre-trial. You just say, well, I'll just do these things and we'll just dismiss it voluntarily without even entering in an agreement with the court. In other words, you're suspending prosecution to give the defendant time to comply with the terms. As long as they comply with the terms, in this case, we'll see if there are details about it, then you just suspend the prosecution and dismiss the case. So there is not even a guilty plea on record, and it's not the judge dismissing it as a result of a change of plea. It's a result of a pre-trial diversion. So depending on the mechanics and the specifics, it could work one of 2 ways. The result, either way, is that the charges are gone, right? They go away as long as Hunter complies with it. Now, the flip side of this, in a pre-trial diversion agreement, and just by the way, I happen to love pretrial diversion agreements. I think that they're very beneficial, especially for first-time offenders, for normal cases, right? Where people screw up, there's a little bit of a problem. You say, hey, it's a pretrial diversion, make them do something. As long as they're compliant, all is well and good. This is Hunter, who is not really your average defendant here. He's kind of somebody who I would call a co-conspirator of the Biden crime family, a much bigger, broader thing. This isn't just, somebody who kind of screwed up one night and got into an altercation, and so they're going to take an anger management class and not do it again. This is a much bigger deal. But as a general rule, right, this is a very nice thing to have in the law. A lot of people screw up and they're able to fix it and get their lives back on track. So it's amazing that Hunter's son, or the president's son, Hunter, maybe they get it. It's a really nice deal. Now, I think it's extraordinarily lenient for the mounds of evidence that we have seen. And if this is really the end of this investigation, it is a double standard of egregious proportions. So we'll see, but let's go to the information in a minute. The defendant is represented by Christopher Clark. The parties jointly request that the court schedule a consolidated initial appearance on the firearm information and an initial appearance and a change of plea hearing on the tax charges. Original executed copies of the plea agreement and the information and the diversion agreement will be submitted in advance of the hearing. And so I really want to see the specific terms of this, because then we can really gauge what this is all about. I'm going to be not surprised if we come back and it's just remain law-abiding. Like, that's the only term of this diversion agreement. So he'll get the charge dismissed, he'll get his firearms back, he'll go vote for his dad, and it'll all go away. Nice deal. Man, what a great defense. Wish when I was representing clients, I could have said, we have the president is my daddy defense. Some nice defense to have. Didn't have that available for any of our clients. You know who else doesn't have that defense? Everybody in America. So this is the information that the prosecutor references. This was also filed along with the letter submitted in the district court. Criminal action detailed for us here. The case number is 274 UNA, ending in the following. United States of America versus Robert Hunter Biden. They say that the U.S. attorney in this case, again, it's not David Weiss who's signing off on this. All right, so every time they come in and tell you that it's David Weiss, Trump appointed David Weiss, Leo Wise signed off on this, along with Derek Hines. All right, just so we're clear about that. Now, it may not mean anything. They're line prosecutors, the whole thing's being investigated by so on and so forth. But just so we're clear, we've seen 2 documents now being filed by Leo Wise. Here's the information. During the calendar year 2017, the defendant, Robert Hunter Biden, 2017, that's when Trump took office, who was a resident of the District of Columbia, had and received taxable income in excess of $1.5 million. Now, this is going to be very curious, because as soon as Hunter enters into this agreement, this is now a matter of public record, and these are admissions that I would argue are evidence against him, right? These are things he's acknowledging. And so the question starts to become, where'd all that money come from, and can you backtrace that to legitimate sources? And in other words, does this open up Pandora's box? Does this open up the can of worms for the Biden crime family? On which taxable income there was owing to the United States of America an income tax in excess of $100,000. So he brought in 1.5 mil, owed more than 100 grand on that. He was required by law to pay on or before April 17th that tax, which, huge fans of the IRS here, okay? Huge fans of the IRS, but the income tax is unconstitutional and illegal. At the IRS center, he was supposed to pay it to another IRS office, and he didn't do that. Well, knowing and believing all of the foregoing, they say Robert Hunter did willfully fail to pay that income tax. We pay our taxes here, man. Count 2 says during the calendar year of 2018, Robert Hunter Biden, who was a resident of DC at the time, following year again, also received taxable income over 1.5 million, where he owed more than 100,000. He was required by law to pay that revenue. Well knowing and believing the foregoing, he willfully failed to pay his taxes that were due in 2019. Wow. That's what they got Hunter on, huh? Amazing. What an incredible investigation. Well done, Leo. Well done, Derek Hines. These prosecutors, man, you guys must be super proud of yourselves over there, huh? David Weiss, Leo Weiss, and Derek Hines. Incredible work, gentlemen. Outstanding job. How long did that take? 5 years? Wow. Amazing. So great. I guess they'll prosecute him on those. Wow. That's what our heroic DOJ is up to. Outstanding. Nice work, gentlemen. Job well done. So all of the other evidence of criminality is just, I guess, not really relevant. Jenna Ellis on Twitter made this comment, a very astute observation. She said, this is literally up on the Justice Department's main page when you go and search about pretrial diversion. Here's what it says. Hunter has pretrial diversion. We just read it. It's applicable to certain offenders. It's to prevent future criminal activity and give restitution and conserve resources and all the things. Diversion's great for the right person, not co-conspirators in a family bribery scheme to defraud America. But I guess that's maybe why I'm not a prosecutor. These decisions are hard. So here's the selection criteria. Now, they tell you that if any of these criteria apply, guess what? Diversion is not available. Absent approval by the Deputy Attorney General, which means if you want to get this done, if somebody hits these criteria, they're not eligible for diversion. You got to go get approval from your boss, the Deputy Attorney General, in order to sign off on this. If you have any of these, you are excluded. Any individual who is accused of any crimes related to children, which, they just, I guess, avoided all of the things on the laptop, that never even came into play. Accused of an offense resulting in serious bodily injury, accused of an offense involving the use of a firearm, which is exactly what we're talking about here, a firearm, a public official accused of an offense arising out of an alleged violation of public trust, terrorism charges, or when he was involved in a large-scale criminal organization like the Biden crime family. But they gave him a diversion deal because he's the president's son, which is very, very nice of them to do. Now, Mike Cernovich also made a similar comment and finding, and he said the following. He said, you can always go over to the U.S. Sentencing Commission, and that tracks prison sentences for people who were convicted of certain crimes. Default on this one, 16 months. Here's what the chart looks like. Quick facts on tax fraud charges. Wow, and Hunter was making millions. We don't know how much more than 1.5 million it was. But we have some statistics here. From fiscal year 2020, which were a couple years after Hunter committed his offenses, average age 52, most U.S. citizens, 73% were tax fraud offenders, were men. Top 5 districts for tax fraud offenders. I don't see anything there from Delaware. But look at this, 68% of those who committed tax fraud offenses were sentenced to prison. And Hunter's got 2 years back to back, 2018, 2017. The average sentence for tax fraud offenders was 16 months. Wow. But where's the category if you're the president's son, though? Is that on here somewhere? Where's the Joe Biden's son, and you have the FBI on your team and you have the media on your team? Do those justify any downward departures? Yeah, very curious. So a lot of other people get sentenced and penalized in this country. But as we talk about here all the time, there are 2 tiers of justice. There is a disfavored defendant class in this new America where we have political prosecutions of political opponents by those in power. A disgusting situation, but Hunter Biden's corrupt deal is probably just the beginning. Now we've got the cover-up, which will follow of all the other nefariousness. And of course, we'll continue to cover.